Okay, hello everybody to me once again throwing my flatmate in front of a PC and making him do stuff for your entertainment. Because why not? We're going to play an Automation because it's a game we put a lot of time and effort into. God knows why. With these shenanigans that always unfold, especially when it's us two.
3 words. Bored uni students.
Yes. Bored engineering students.
There we go.
Yes. So, quite a big mod list, about 400 odd mods. Just subscribe to some mod packs. And today's episode will consist of cheesy background music that is part of the game. And, I don't know. Maybe I'll give you some specifics for making stuff, because why not make it a bit more entertaining for the viewers? And by that, I probably was talking about the other day, about making what you think everyone would want. Because why not? There's 8 things right off the bat, and I'll probably edit it so each one is an episode. Because that's how long these normally take. Nice chill game with, And of course I'm making him do it because he's our resident Italian, which makes everything more fitting.
Buonasera.
Yes, that's going in YouTube. Yeah.
Buonasera tutti.
I could see the comments already. Do put in the comments if you want to. Oh God. Do put in the comments if you want to see us stream this, because it's one of those games you can. So I'm going to hand over to Joe, and I'm going to get started.
Joe. There's no R in my name.
Yeah. And I'm going to enjoy eating ice cream. Should we start with the dense?
Yeah, let's start with dense, because that's going to be probably the easiest and the most hilarious.
For security reasons, we won't actually be naming anyone by their actual names. We'll change them. So we got dense.
It's kind of useful because we can't pronounce his name anyway.
Well, we can. It's just we don't.
We cannot be asked.
Mm.
It is Hungarian and it is awkward, much like him.
Calling him out. That's why I'm calling you Joe.
From what he has expressed to us in the past, he wants the biggest, most obnoxious 4x4 possible.
Are you going to find that? Are you going to hammer body?
No, I was thinking mining truck.
Oh no, he wouldn't.
It's big and obnoxious, just like him.
You're going to have to channel down a bit. I know you've had a drink, but come on. Stream this tomorrow and get taken off Twitch because of the content that all you guys are saying in the background.
He's an interesting character, but he does lift everyone's spirits.
No. Shush.
Unfortunately, they can only...
Don't take Paul out of context.
They can only be one of him, though, because that's all anyone will be able to take.
Mm. Casually calling out our mates on the playthrough, because... Why not?
Thinking Range Rover. He has expressed a like for them before.
He does quite like a Range Rover. He does like a Defender as well.
Mm.
I think this is Defender's personal preference on it.
Defender, yes.
My ice cream's a bit frozen because it's been at the bottom of the freezer.
For several months.
Yes. And a disclaimer for the audience as we scroll through this. Not all of these bodies work.
No, as we found out to our cost.
Yes. And I'm not going through the 438 or whatever it is mod list to remove 1 or 2 body mods. I'm committed to this game, but not that committed.
Mm.
Also this one, because why not, we'll make it family friendly and try to keep the swearing down.
Like duck, we will.
No. Don't you dare start. Rice will come back in and just give out a tirade of swear words.
That's right, it would be a tirade of laughing.
Yeah.
And long or short wheelbase? Like,
Long wheelbase double cab pickup truck.
that's kind of what I was looking at. Right.
This will also be a very impromptu tutorial type video series as well, because we can kind of talk through some of the ideas for different car types.
And I mean, oh, that's got orange.
That's a very vivid colour.
That's
Ooh.
incredibly Dutch. Aluminium body.
It is the Dutch football
leather
team
chassis.
colours. So we may as well make it simplified. I'll explain it as we go through. The panel material is what all the body's made from, and this choice of aluminium, it's a light material, and what a lot of cars are made of. The chassis type, it's a bit underneath, in this case a ladder, it's just two strong pieces of metal underneath with some bits across, like a ladder. The material, it's not really very well depicted here.
That really isn't.
Yeah, the chassis material then, it's pretty self-explanatory, what you want to pick for it.
It can be in a Land Rover, steel, because it must rust.
Standard steel will rust. Engine placement, front bit is pretty straightforward. Longitudinal means it's in a straight line, and transverse means it's kind of in sideways. The suspension, leaf springs are. I'm trying to think of an easy word. The
Simple, basic, and agricultural.
yeah, it's one of the oldest forms of suspension before we had a coil system, and it's the same front and back, so we don't need to explain the rest of it.
Well, as always, completely new engine for a new car. Come on,
We'll name them later. Yep. So in this case, you selected an inline engine for the engine block, which means all the cylinders will be placed in a line.
And immediately the engine doesn't fit.
Yes, because you haven't selected anything, it will fit when you do some tweaking.
It being dense. V8.
Possibly. It's a shame we don't have diesels yet, but as far as we can tell, the developers are working on that.
Hey.
So in this case, you selected a 90-degree V engine with 8 cylinders, so you get the angle of it. The V is 90 degrees, this is pretty self-explanatory, and 8 for the 8 cylinders. What he's adjusting there is the bore and stroke. The bore is how wide the pistons are, and then the stroke is how far each piston will move in its cylinder. This gives you the capacity, which gives you the cc or litre of the engine. For example, this one would be considered as a 3.5 litre V8, which is not one to scoff at, to be honest. It's a nice size engine. And then the material, again, pretty self-explanatory. Aluminium is probably the most common use block material these days.
Well, again, I'm going
or an aluminium alloy at least.
Classic Rover V8, 3.5 litre. Not very powerful.
No.
But burgly and lovely.
A lot of grunt. The heads and valves would take a bit more time to explain the types. I'll just explain the one he selects. Pushrod, a more traditional type of valve. There's a train running underneath the crankshaft, which then pushes rods and opens and closes the valve. There's no point in showing yet, it'll change when you do the next section.
Well, we've done it. I've done it anyway.
The head material, that's the top parts of the engine, where all the valves on that are. And that's kind of it for that one. I'll explain the rest as he goes through.
I've changed my mind with the engine slightly. I've changed my mind slightly with the engine.
Yeah, I know, it says right. One a bit bigger.
5 litre V8.
I will point out, yes, we are making a classic style vehicle. However, because we've set it to 2020, we have all of the components unlocked. Because this is more of a thought experiment type challenge, I say in inverted commas, than being historically accurate or things along those lines. Spot on. Nice. Next one, he's selecting his crank material, and the crank is the piece in the centre that rotates. The top 3 options are what would end up with a more American sounding V8. It burbles, the sort of traditional noise. you'd expect. The flat plane crank means that because the way the crankshaft is all angled, it creates a different noise, essentially. And there are some other differences, but the sound is the noticeable one. It gives you the more European sounding V8s that you get in things like Ferraris. Along with maybe Bentley? Because they do have the different engine mode.
Bentley tends to have a very big, burbly V8.
Yeah, they are
It's a
actually
very dirty noise.
Yes.
Design fairly simple.
And, yep. The con rods are the metal rods that connect the piston to the crankshaft. And then the piston, again, pretty straightforward, releases the... excuse me. These are the different production methods. They all result in a different strengths and weaknesses for each component. Cost in this case is kind of irrelevant. It's not what we need to focus on. While you're naming that, some of the other things I'll go over. For those that aren't familiar with this game, the grid we've got open on the right above varying capacity and quality shows us how full the engine bay will be. At the minute he's only taking up 52% of space, nowhere near the limits for the bonnet size, and it also shows all the other different orientations for the gearbox in that. Skipping over for a lot of that since it's not relevant. Fuel system, for this case injection, we'll have a fuel injector in the piston to pipe fuel, well, depending on what it is, to pipe fuel straight in instead of a carburetor which mixes air and fuel after that. Multi-point EFI and the cylinder. I'm not exactly sure on the EFI. Actually, not that injected to the pipe.
Electronic fuel injection.
Yeah. Yeah. And then per cylinder, there's an injector for each cylinder. Intake, pretty straightforward. It's what brings the air in, and he's gone for a standard one, which is easily the best way to describe is what most cars would be sort of fitted with.
Standard, normal, Volvo production spec.
Yeah. Fuel type, again, pretty straightforward. In this case, he's selected regular, which in the UK is... Actually, we don't sell it that in the UK. The 91 RON, that's standard by American.
Yes.
In the UK, so I'm guessing it's a UK audience for this, the 95 RON, the premium that puts this game, is what our standard petrol is, your unleaded. And super unleaded would be the Super, the 98 RON. Headers then, these are the part of the exhaust manifold, the bit that gets the exhaust out of the cylinders. I don't think I need to explain the single and dual exhausts to the audience. As a catalytic converter, I may as well explain this while you're deciding it, is what is used to reduce your emissions, amongst a couple of other things. So you make your car more eco-friendly, but it does choke the engine a little. It means the airflow is not as good. Muffler there, he's gone for baffled. It's just a bit of a silencer on the exhaust of the engine isn't as loud. Some of the issues, I may as well explain them here. The minus 11% for knocking means it's having difficulty with firing, isn't it, knocking?
The fuel is igniting sooner than it should be.
Yes. I will point out the fact that he is actually studying for automotive engineering. This for me is a bit more of a hobby/interest. I'm aerospace myself, so I got some of the things that... Compression is basically how much the fuel is squished.
Pretty much.
Inside the cylinders. Cam profile, he hasn't really, as far as, well, I'll go through as he changes things. RPM limit, it increases or decreases how high you let the engine rev.
Not turbochargers.
Yeah, we don't need turbo. We're not fitting turbos, are we? I say we. No.
I'm not.
Yeah. Fuel mixture is essentially the air-fuel ratio. How much units of air per fuel. The richer it is, you tend to get, well, you go through the fuel a bit quicker, but you get more power out of it. Leaner, it lasts longer, but you don't get as much power. Exhaust diameter, again, how wide the exhausts are. It helps with airflow. Not necessarily a visible thing in this game, as you can have a teeny tiny exhaust diameter and a gigantic exhaust. This is pre 4.2 update, by the way, if it isn't uploaded before the big update, which we are quite excited for, are we not?
Yes.
The next update pack For any particular reasons? If you'd like to tell anyone else. Actually, he's focusing on that. The cam profile, I'll explain. Cam profiles is, well, apart from actually,
It's the shape of the camshaft load.
yes.
It determines how much and how much the valves are opened and how quickly they are opened.
Yes. Which, for most people, you'll be able to notice by the sound the engine will make afterwards on it. Yeah, you tend to race one, you have more high performance. Again, then the lower you get more fuel efficiency. That is how this will generally work as we go through this. Ignition timing is just how responsive the ignition system is, and no size. It could possibly, it generally will increase power as the pop-up said just now. I feel a bit superfluous in this section. And honestly kind of talking to fill in the gaps. I should probably have some car-related trivia up on my phone really and read this out while you're focusing on things.
Well, we can improve this section in future episodes.
I could do, and while I'm doing that, I will bring up car-related trivia, because why not? And it'll make it a bit more interesting for you, my adoring audience. He says with inverted commas. All 7 of you. No, so I end up with a little chat show. Oh, I've got some ideas for some interesting facts. One possible discussing point, as when we like to chat about a lot, is we could go over some of our, as is relevant, some racing driver trivia or discussions. For us, our discussions tend to link quite a lot about some of the, well, quite a lot of the time recognised as the greatest drivers in history. Fangio, Sterling Moss on occasion, Jackie Stewart, and Jim Clark. As many as we keep an eye on the Formula One.
I think this is all we're going to get out of this engine.
Fair enough.
I expect a little bit more out of a 5-litre V8.
323 pound-feet of torque. Could be a lot worse.
I suppose as we're aiming for the old Rover V8, just enlarge that, more or less what we got.
Yeah, you're on the. Actually, I'll bring that up.
As none of us are art students or design led in any way, ignoring this bit.
Yep. You could change the overhead valve system things though. Wow.
So, yeah, leave them as they are. Go right now. Quick test.
They did do a 5-litre variant of the Rover V8.
Maybe used in TDRs.
Yes, it was. Nice though. Yeah, it's in the Chimera and the Griffith. It's in the Bowler Wildcat. Yeah. 340 horsepower, 350 pound-feet of torque.
A little short.
So it's a little bit short, but it's not too bad.
But that's in TBRs, isn't it?
Yes.
So proper sports cars.
Oh, and the Litchfield Land Rovers. Well, Wildcat.
Yeah, slightly more sporting.
Yes.
So, it's a little bit like.
Apparently, there was a 5.2, 5.4, and 5.5 litre variant of those engines. For a little extra detail for you guys as well, I will put... Actually, to make it a bit more interesting, I will put the vehicle in... we'll export the vehicle to BeamNG Drive to have to drive about. Along with... I will put a link to the car file, the .car file, in the description. So you guys will be able to download these cars for yourselves, if you are so inclined. One rule we do make with our car designs, for paints especially, is we do not allow the standard paint job that the game has, because you end up with some very questionable looking cars in BeamNG Drive. There's a tray at the end. Just steel. Classic. One thing we may do as to make these episodes two-parters or multiple-parters is having the reveal to the person this car was made for. So we can back to the details.
It's all flashes of red on the window trim.
Yeah. Might be a reflection of the tape from behind it.
Probably.
Yeah.
We'll leave the fixtures to last, as we usually do.
Yep, we know. Just a rule we add for one of the people we play these with. Fixtures tend to go towards the end because it's very easy to spend up to an hour on fixtures. The drive type here is like longitudinal 4x4. This type of 4x4 is what you'd have on off-road vehicles. It's different from all-wheel drive. Gearbox, manual, very straightforward. It would have a gear stick or stick, depending on what side of the pond you're from. Ratios is how many gears he has selected. So in this case, it'll have a 5-speed, 5 forward, 1 reverse. The top speed and spacing, it's not going to make much difference tweaking now because we don't have it fully calculated. The differential. The whole point of it is it allows the wheels to turn at different speeds as you go around corners. In this case, a manual locking differential is good for off-road vehicles. So when you feel like you're not getting enough grip or the power's slipping at a certain point, you could lock the diff there to allow you to travel over it easier. It also allows you to decide where the power's sent if you lock it in different ways. That's more or less it on this differential, is it not?
Yes.
That's pretty much it.
It just allows the driven wheels to turn at different speeds.
Yes.
Side clearance and all that.
Yeah, engine clearance happens a lot in this. Tyre type. This is obviously the way the tyres are made. The radial tyres are what pretty much every single tyre company makes, and the chunky off-road, pretty self-explanatory. The next ones you can see adjust as he changes them. Tyre diameter is how wide the tyres are, the same for the rims, in terms of from the centre of the axle to the outermost part. The tyre width, again, pretty straightforward, how wide from the front the tyres are. And then the offset, as you can see there, how far he sets the wheels out from the centre. Sometimes when you make the wheels, they won't fill the wheel arches correctly, so you adjust them. And they also do have a change in handling as well. The rim material, in this case steel, it just decides on what the rims of the tyres are made from. Again, once again, pretty self-explanatory. There's a case of widening the tyres to quite extreme sizes there.
Preempt or be automation as much as possible, try and get as few errors, which usually always doesn't work.
Yes, the best strategy I've found for this is to make the vehicle as you would want it to start off with, in terms of components and things like that. Then once you've selected all your components, go back to change the sliders. The brake types here, as you can see for solid discs, are essentially modern brakes. You'd have a disc that would be fixed to the axle, to the shaft as it spins, the wheel, and you have a pad which would then compress around it. Easiest way to describe it is you holding a plate in one hand. The tighter the brake squeezes, the harder the brakes are applied and the quicker you stop. In this case, it's only got one piston for the moment, which means it's not as strong with the gripping effect. Pad type, in this case, again we'll come back to later, same for the brake bias. The under tray, it's a piece you have underneath the vehicle for one of many reasons. In this case, off-road skid tray is just a piece of metal underneath to stop you bashing things as you're going off-road. Fit in the cooling flaps, in this case adds sections of the vehicle that would open and close, allowing airflow into the vehicle for better cooling. And he has maxed brake airflow, which is something we've learned to do to get rid of brake fade, our dreaded nemesis in construction.
It's an absolute pain in the derriere to remove.
Our arse is fine to say.
Alright.
We are trying our best to be PG with this.
What was wrong with...
The light, a bit more ruder words, but nothing sweary.
Yeah, nothing on the lines of see you next Tuesday.
Yes. And that's as far as we're taking this.
Defender, so we're going to have seats.
What he's doing here is adjusting how big the seats in the vehicle are. In this case, the 2 3-set seats, these ones are like the back seats in something like a sedan or saloon car. If you look at it, the 3 separate seats that all could individually fold down. The interior, it's gone for a standard interior, easily described as, what do you reckon?
Basic but functional.
Yeah, basic but functional.
All you need, nothing more.
Yeah, something along the lines of maybe a Astra.
Well,
They're the more common cars you sort of get. And an infotainment system, in this case, it would be how most cars have the sort of tablet type screen in the centre with all the information on there. In this case, it's the standard one, what you'd expect in most cars. It's a bit difficult to describe the basic, standard, premium, luxury split. We'll be using a lot of car examples for this, for these stereotypes. And now power steering. This is something that's a good chunk of, majority of cars are fitted with, which aid in turning the wheels. They attach to the steering wheel, and, well, the steering rack, it's termed. So you are not it's not just you that has to turn the wheel, not your brute strength. The traction aids is selected ABS, which is an anti-lock braking system, which is a standard safety feature now. When you apply the brakes, your wheels do not lock up or stop, so you don't slide. You still get the grip out of it. And then the safety features, standard safety for the 2000s. Things like we'll cut the car out, cut the engine if you're in a crash. Things along those lines. Ah yes, the springs. Again. I'll wait for your selection. I get a feeling hydrogen pneumatic is probably going to make an appearance at one point or another, due to our love of hydrogen pneumatic suspension.
I'm just thinking what would be the best for off-road.
Yes, and it's active comfort because it's actively working on it.
That's incredibly high-end for a fairly basic, fairly simple...
Yes, what the sort of vehicle we are making here is a lot more utilitarian than anything else.
Utilitarian with grunt.
Yes. It's a lump of metal that you can batter about but continue. For modern examples, a lot of, Japanese pickup trucks is a perfect example. Things like the Toyota Hilux.
Toyota Hilux, Mitsubishi L200s.
Yes.
Various Isuzu, the Isuzu D-Max.
Yeah. If we hop across the pond, you'll be getting things like the standard...
Ford Ranger.
Ford Ranger, perfect example. A lot of American pickup trucks, the lower end pickup trucks, which are very straightforward.
Fleet vehicles.
Fleet vehicles. Dampers, the spring's pretty straightforward. I'm sure you've all seen a spring. Damper is a part attached to it which will stop the springs from just continually bouncing. And then the sway bars are fitted...
Anti-roll bars.
Yeah, they are your anti-roll bars. And we seem to be having a minor issue or two here, considering that you've got a few red flags popping up.
Guarantee you it will be...
Wheel spin. Yes. Severe issues with wheel spin. This is because we haven't changed any of the sliders yet. This is all as standard. And is 91.5% fun premium. you will notice us in the rest of our videos making fun of the current automation system, as some of them don't really make sense.
Make about as much sense as
a chocolate well.
I was actually about to say
chocolate teapot, yeah. Oh god, you can be able to tell we're British, aren't you, from the way we talk. Yeah, so as we go back and change features, I'll explain them now in a minute.
Right.
So the top speed gearing, as he does it, is quite a lot of wheel spin in first gear, 99.6%. As he increases this, it makes the gears effectively longer, which means you're able to get a higher speed out of it at the cost of acceleration. You can go faster, but it takes longer to get to that speed. And it has the byproduct here of reducing wheel spin. The spacing then is in between gears, how close together they are. Effectively, if you have a car with very little spacing, you can start in higher gears. Because you get more grunt, effectively, out of the engine. And if you go the other way, you get more power out of it. It's sort of the torque over power.
It's completely annihilate wheel spin.
Yes.
It'll be...
Yeah. For an off-road vehicle, you tend to want a higher torque, a higher spacing, so you get more power onto the to the wheels. It's always a battle between. It's normally caused by the battle between torque and grip. If you don't have enough grip to handle the torque, your wheels will spin, and you'll have grip issues. However, these issues will tend to the issues revolving around this. They will tend to happen at lower speeds. And while this is happening, I'm going to pop on a shirt because I'm getting quite cold. Because it is a very, very warm summer that this building is not prepared for.
No.
Wheel settings here. While I'm here working that, we'll explain the difference what oversteer and understeer is. Now that yellow line is how the car reacts. Oversteer is untight.
Thank you.
Oversteer means that to put it, how do you normally explain it? The back end of the car will crash into the tree.
Or with oversteer, or with understeer, you hit the tree face first.
Yes.
With oversteer, you hit the tree arse first.
Yes. The general gist of it is oversteer is what you think of as drifting. The back end of the car will swing either way, and you will have to turn more than you'd expect. Hence oversteer. Understeer is when you'd be turning the wheel, and people drive past. Because again, I've got the window open, and we're on the 5th floor, next to a busy road. There we go. Yes, you'll have the wheel turned, but the car will be moving straight forwards, or turning a little bit, not as much as you want. You're not steering enough, hence the understeer. Perfect example is one of the arguments between front wheel and rear wheel drive cars. The characteristics of steering are different. And normally, well, depending on how the car's made and how you drive it, you can spot the difference between a front wheel and rear wheel drive car from how they handle. If the engine placement is the same. We'll get into the differences between front, middle and rear engine vehicles later on. But this one is front engine, which means it's over or in front of the front axle. It's under the bonnet where the vast majority of cars you see will be front engined. I'm not too pleased with the steering. Oh yes, you're fine tuning. Now, I will point out the fact, and this is going to be a running joke with this series, that our resident Italian, Joe, has a habit of what we refer to as greebling. He will...
Oh, perfectionism.
Yes. It's tweaking tiny details to get it absolutely perfect. Whereas some of us, the rest of us, have...
Ballpark it and
yes.
do a subpar job.
Yes. I think the jokey phrase is, that'll do. Actually, while we're here, I shall give some facts about the Land Rover Defender.
Four-wheel brakes are nowhere near powerful enough.
Yes, in this case, he's increasing the piston. And while we're here, actually, before we start, I'll explain what brake fade is. Now, brake fade is the brakes heating up from use, but heating up more than the vehicle is able to handle from braking. They're having difficulty dealing with the braking. To counter this, you have a number of options. Either you increase the quality of the brakes, like the material, for example, as you can see on the brake types, you have the carbon ceramic, or another one is the vented discs. You make holes in the disc to have better cooling. The other option you have, though, is to just increase the size of the disc. This gives it a bigger surface area, it's able to bleed off the heat easier. You will sometimes hear about cars boiling their brakes or things along these lines. That is brake fade. In this, it's quite a bit of a balance fighting between brakes that are excessively powerful or brakes that have a lot of fade. As you can see where the full lines are here. The full lines in the center graph are how powerful the brakes are. The dotted line is how much grip you have. So if your brake's power exceeds the grip, and you don't have anti-lock brake systems, what will happen is you will effectively, as I said before, lock up. If it is lower than that, your brakes are not powerful enough to handle all of the grip that you've got. You've got some leftover grip, effectively. And depending on how you look at it, is safer, isn't as safe? It, again, all depends on your opinions on it and whether you fit your vehicle with anti-lock brakes or not. But here we'll give some extra details about the Land Rover Defender, since this is the vehicle we are basing it off of. So I'll go through some fun facts as I read them.
Aerodynamics.
Yes.
It's a brick.
For this sort of vehicle, aerodynamics are kind of irrelevant. But yeah, so some facts is like, did you know the name Defender for these vehicles has only existed since 1990? Before that, it was just the series number Land Rover.
Yeah, well, just
Or Land Rover.
The 90, the 110.
Yeah. New series 1, 2, 3 and all that. As you go through these,
Shouting at me for. Rear mind frequency is low.
Tyres are wide.
Still issues with wheel spin, but four-wheel drive helps quite a lot with that.
It's another one. Some of these facts I will be giving out about certain vehicles you may or may not have heard before from shows such as Top Gear, the Grand Tour, Fifth Gear, I think is one of the other ones. And other shows.
The more serious one.
Yes, Fifth Gear is a bit more serious than the messing about that is Top Gear.
And
the Grand Tour. And yes, it is the running gag among us of me being James May in my attitude towards some things. And I'm not sure whether I'll bring our resident Clarkson in on one or two of these videos. Depends if he chooses to join in. It's unlikely. Yes, very unlikely. And this bit's going to be edited out as well, so don't worry.
It's a twat. No, we have to edit it down.
No! Stop giving me work. I have to make a timestamp. Right, anyway, back to the fun facts.
Continue swearing.
No. Back to fun facts. The first prototype of the Land Rover had a central-mounted steering wheel, which was another example of the kind of what became the British stereotype for engineering. So having a brilliant idea, but not necessarily working out as well. You see this a lot with sort of...
100%.
Hmm?
Not 100%, no.
Yeah. You get this sort of thing a lot with honestly up until maybe the 80s for engineering ideas. Sort of the good idea but doesn't necessarily work as well. Or how it's implemented.
I'd say up till Rover finally went top. The Rover had some good ideas, but their marketing was atrocious.
Yes. That's one of the things that kind of killed the industry, really.
Yes, their customer base just died off.
Yes. But the idea for the central mounted steering wheel, in this case, was so if they wanted to sell it to left-hand drive or right-hand drive, they would not need to re-engineer it. It was reasonably straightforward to work with. However, they realised that there were a few issues with that. Chiefly, which was demonstrated in the Grand Tour episode, which, by the way, I'd recommend you guys go and watch if you haven't seen already. was the...
And no, we're not sponsored by the Grand Tour.
No, we're not sponsored. We're not big enough to be sponsored by the... Like, they need sponsorship anymore. Was the...
They don't, but we do.
Yes, they don't. We need sponsorship.
We need
Please.
sponsorship money.
Yes. Please, Dr. May and then Mr. Clarkson, Mr. Hammond, if you're willing to sponsor this YouTube channel, we would very much appreciate it.
I'm
But-
going to go for Domino's. Could you sponsor us so we have free pizza?
Yes, anyone who wants to sponsor us, yes. I mean,
I am not interested.
yes.
Our
Hashtag.
studio audience seems to have come to and woken up.
Yes,
Mention of food.
But getting back to the point I was trying to make with the central mounted steering wheel, made hand signals quite difficult. A time where hand signals were kind of still a requirement.
Yes.
To a degree.
Hand signals and trafficators were.
Or
still
indicator. Yeah, trafficators.
Trafficators were basically a bit of metal would pop out the side of the car.
Yes. Yeah, but there are cars that do still have. Well, I say still have. There are cars that are made with central driving positions. The McLaren F1 is a perfect example. Not sure about other examples actually, off the top of my head.
The McLaren Speedtail, which is a
Oh yes,
a spiritual successor to the F1.
yeah, because the F1 had a Speedtail version. They had one that they referred. I don't think it was the race edition.
No, I'm talking about the.
No, I know this is the new Speedtail, but the F1 had a
long tail variant.
long tail version.
for racing.
Yes,
I think
and that's what the Speedtail is the successor to, I think.
Well, it's more McLaren pitching it as a Hyper GT
Yeah.
for incredibly high speed, immense power, and quite incredible acceleration.
So the McLaren F1 was an exceptional vehicle as well for the time. It held the record for fastest production car for a very long time. It's from the 90s till 2000.
So yeah,
Till the Bugatti Veyron came out.
rocked up and
Shattered the record.
I wouldn't quite say shattered. But
Well, at those speeds,
moved the game on.
at those speeds, a couple of miles an hour is a lot. Which we'll probably get to later on if we make when we get to supercars and things like that, how difficult these are.
That's what we shouted at. Right vintage low. That was a soft. Because I'm aiming for comfort.
Well,
Well, apparently this Land Rover Defender can do 160 miles an hour.
yes,
Which is utter bleep.
yes, it's excessive. No, it's one way to put it nicely. No, the one thing we point with. One thing I insist you to bear in mind when we make these comments about the game that we're using. It can only go so far to calculating real life statistics and things like that. There's some things that this game cannot take into account. For example, one thing is the weight will actually be different because it doesn't take into account the size of the fuel tank and things along those lines. There's a lot of stuff that would be inside the vehicle that it cannot calculate. All of the fixtures that are fitted don't have mass, they don't have weight, so that would bring the top speed down. Also, there are lots of other features that can interfere with the top speed. For example, and one people don't necessarily think about is the top speed that the company give the car isn't necessarily the top speed that you could get it to, because it depends on the weight of the passenger and the driver.
Yes.
Because in theory, you are increasing the weight of the vehicle. So there are little but these are details, however, that you can't. They're not ones that the manufacturer has lied to. No, it is all. They will give a vehicle a rating. They normally tend to put a test weight in, don't they, as they do the speed tests.
I have precisely no idea.
It's ones we need to honestly, there's one for you guys to go and have a look at. We'd recommend some detailing on. One thing we'll point out here as well, which is possibly unintentional, a lot of the original Land Rovers, the Defenders, were painted in a very similar colour to this, mainly because after World War II, it was the vast majority of paint they could get their hands on.
Yeah, army surplus.
Yeah, it was all army surplus. In the same way that a lot of, the original Land Rovers were made from aluminium instead of steel, like a lot of other off-road vehicles, which, looking at it now, we'd think is very forward-thinking for the time. No, in reality, it was the only material they could get their hands on because of the massive steel shortage that followed the Second World War. because everyone needs to rebuild. They're building navies, and steel was in high demand during the war. Steel was rationed effectively.
Many things were rationed, and we had
Yes.
lots and lots of aluminium surplus because we didn't need to build fighter planes anymore.
Yeah, we didn't need to fighter planes anymore. But during the war, it was rationed to an extent, and you got vehicles such as the Mosquito, famously, was a very modern, at the time, aircraft, and it was built mainly from wood, which, depending on your opinions on it, you could look down upon. As I'm going through, I'll bring up another fun fact for the people may or may not know.
Dear for this.
The Defender is the Queen's vehicle of choice when she's not in her limo.
Ooh.
Oh, accidentally moving the camera, are we, Joe? Top button there to reset. Don't press the middle mouse button and I think at the same time.
I'm getting games mixed up.
Yes. Well, we may as well give a fact about the Queen for those who... It is quite a well-known fact. But the Queen, during World War II, was an ambulance driver. She worked for the auxiliary corps, I think. I'm not exactly sure off the top of my head. I could research it, but I'm not going to. There's one thing that some people don't always remember. And it's quite entertaining when you sometimes see the odd report here and there of the Queen driving about on her estate, chilling in her Land Rover. Didn't Prince Philip have a special Land Rover made for his hearse?
Yes.
Yeah, the extremely long wheelbase version.
Yes.
As a hearse. Which says a lot about this sort of vehicle, because you get a lot of... Something that kind of plagues the motor industry, really, is the stereotypes of people that evolve around their car. There's, in the UK especially, I'm not sure about in other countries, there's the whole stereotype about the BMW driver, the Audi driver, depending on the joke, the average Honda Civic driver, things along those lines. Yes. But it's like every other. It's like with stereotypes. Then not everybody is, and a lot of the stereotypes around royalty for a vehicle tends to be something like a Rolls Royce, a Bentley. Maybe you go to a few more obscure vehicles, but to point out that the British royal family's vehicle of choice, or at least for the oldest members of the royal family, is the Land Rover Defender. It is kind of makes some sense when you think about what happened, effectively what made the Range Rover go in the route it did. Because the Range Rover was initially designed as effectively a larger version of the Defender.
It's
A slightly more comfortable version, yes. And it turned out to be the ideal vehicle for what we refer to the upper class members to drive around on their estates with. Because if you think about it, it's a lot of space, good off-road. You kind of fit that market. And then as a result of this, it started to move further towards that market. Because at the time, the idea was if you wanted a dependable off-road vehicle, you would pick something like a Defender. Or, as the time went on, maybe you'd lean towards the Japanese pickup trucks, or things of that nature. And as such, the Range Rover has kind of gone into this not really, would you say giant in the luxury world?
Range Rover.
Yeah, the Range Rover. Yes.
The Range Rover has moved on from a sort of off-roader into a luxury vehicle that just happens to be very good at going off-road.
Yes. It's initially started as an off-road. It's still designed initially with off-roading in mind. That's the one thing they keep in mind with it. But, again, and the people who normally would have bought the Range Rover that were priced out of the market and had to then buy things such as, well, eventually move on to buying the Japanese pickup trucks.
Yep.
That's why they're a lot more common now.
Reliability also played a very large hand in all this.
Oh, one you may not be aware of. You could order a monster truck variant of the Land Rover Defender. They made one.
Why?
engineers.
Well, yeah, but you could order one. And if you do, there are a lot of photographs online of different variants of the Defender. I mean, some of the things it was brought up again in the either the Top Gear or the Grand Tour. I think no, it was Top Gear when Richard Hammond was going on about. There was doing a piece on it when they were going to cancel production of the Defender, about how they made a lot of different versions. They had one modified to run on railway lines. A hovercraft version. It's one of the more notable ones. They made a hovercraft version.
Oh, they made an amphibious version.
Yeah, there was a hovercraft.
Well, you know.
Yeah.
You've been just learning something new.
Because again, I'm going through the facts of the vehicle because I may as well. And one you are probably familiar with, there was a Caterpillar version. You could buy one with treads instead of wheels. To a degree, reminiscent of Richard Hammond's Ford Focus.
Yes, Ford Focus.
The Ford Focus he was driving in the most recent Grand Tour Special. As of time of recording.
A massive hunt.
A massive hunt, which I'm allowed to say.
Yes,
Because they had an amazing sense of humour.
Yes, and of course, as you say, it's a massive hunt. It's alluding to the 1970s Formula 1 driver James Hunt, who many would call him a massive hunt.
Yes. Oh, Lord, we are treading along the line that will get me demonetized, ladies and gentlemen. I may put some light censorship in, maybe. Depends on how much I can be bothered to do the editing, because that's a task enough. Oh, the early station wagon versions, or estate versions, if you're in the UK, the bodies were made by the same people who made the bodies for Rolls-Royce.
Tickford.
Yes, it was.
Yeah,
Tickford. Tickford, a coach builder, which is an interesting premise, having your coach built estate version of an off-road vehicle. I just saw the bullhorns.
Yep.
Yeah, a lot of the mods in this pack we are not that familiar with, and also we are quite wary about the modded badge components, as a lot of them, when exported over to BeamNG Drive, appear as a white square. There are something, if they're of the more badge type, like a piece of metal mounted onto something, they will show up properly. But if it's an image, it doesn't show up correctly. So that's one to remember. So yes, the rims. One that we simultaneously have too many and not enough.
Yes.
Because that's the one thing that you get with games like this. You're trying to this is with the styling. It's always easy tweaking to get it perfect, which always makes it. All it could take is the wheel rims. All it could take is the position of the indicator between a beautiful design and one that's not as nice. Here's one.
There are some disgusting wheel rims.
Oh yes, because of the mod packs I have been downloading, there are some properly disgusting ones. I think a perfect example is the neon LED ones I found, which we may demonstrate later. Ooh, after the Tickford versions, the 12-seat, 109-inch estate versions were a brilliant tax dodge. Under British law, the largest of these vehicles, Defenders, series divisions, they counted as a minibus, and you paid less tax on a minibus when you buy it, and you could even drive it along the bus lanes in London traffic.
Excellent.
Which don't get your hopes up now. That law has been amended since, but it's a very interesting little pointer. And while we're thinking about it, there's the may or may not remember from episodes, the advertisement they did about climbing a dam.
Yes.
under the winch, which sadly was a little bit staged as the event. It did winch itself up onto the dam, but it did not winch itself the way up the dam. It was pulled up.
It was winched up. It didn't winch itself up.
Yes.
It was winched up.
However, it was done its correct justice later on by Richard Hammond in Top Gear, in the same episode we've been discussing pretty much this whole time, he then took a Defender. It was a Series 1.
It was an ancient one.
It was one of the original ones. It was mounted with a second engine into the back for the winch, because of once they got onto it, the engine would be starved of its fluids. And they winched it up the dam. It winched itself up. Once it got to the top, once it got almost to the top, once it reached towards the top, they realised that they wouldn't be able to winch itself over correctly, because where the winch was mounted, it could go up to the top but couldn't crest the top of the dam. I think since we're at a nice point, I'm going to now switch over to discussing the new Defender.
Oof, caught in controversy here.
Yes. Now, I will point out the fact that I myself, when hearing that there was a new Defender coming, I was very excited. I was a bit disappointed once the new Defender came out. A couple of minor reasons. Personally, I think it sits... The ideas for the design was... they wanted to take some inspiration from the original vehicle, which is fair enough. It's a replacement. It's a sequel to it. And the nice design nod here and there would have been nice.
They still wanted it to be recognisable
as a Defender. But they also were bringing in the Land Rover's more modern styling. Yeah. And I'm in two opinions on it. If you have the version that doesn't have the plastic, I'm going to describe as bull bar on the front, the extra plastic extra on it. If you have that, I wouldn't with the styling on it. However, the version without it looks quite nice. I do quite like the long wheelbase version for it. It looks very nice. And there are the nice nods here and there. For example, along the roof, they've got the two small slits that the original vehicle had. So here, I'm going to go through some facts about the more modern one, which we may or may not be aware of as we read through. There's a hybrid model on the way. It's a plug-in hybrid model. Where it'll
you have to nowadays.
Yeah. It's going to be a 2 litre 4-cylinder turbo diesel between 197 horsepower and 237. A 300, well, we'll give it Top Gear maths. We'll round the numbers a bit.
Sorry, I'm distracting.
Sorry, I'm on the... yes. As I'm reading these facts out, I'm browsing the internet for facts. But yes, you'll be able to get a 300 horsepower turbocharged 4-litre petrol engine and a 400 horsepower 3-litre turbocharged and supercharged petrol straight 6 at the moment. But a plug-in version is coming. There aren't any technical details as of this, but it'll go sale this year.
Been on sale for a while.
Is it?
Yes.
Well, the hybrid version.
No, the Defender has.
Oh, the standard Defender, yes. It's the...
I believe
these engines.
Some of the... I think the 2-litre turbo diesels have been discontinued.
Oh, have they discontinued?
I believe so.
There you are.
The turbocharged 4-cylinder petrol and the 3-litre... I think it's just a 3-litre turbocharged 6-cylinder at the moment.
Yes, it's straight 6.
Just turbocharged, not
Yeah.
supercharged.
Apparently it has clever door skins. The Defender doors are but more than just exposed rivets. The skins, and as the inside, are structural. They act as an anchor for the window motors and door locks on the inside of the door. As a result, there's one less layer of trim, so you get more elbow room. You get more space inside the cabin, which is a nice, interesting design. It's a good case of minimalism, I think. Because if you look at the way, if you ever took apart a car door, you'd see how the different components for it. I just saw the hitch for the trailer parts.
Oh, fifth wheel. I think that's a truck's fifth wheel.
Yeah, that's for the mod, the trailer mod we have.
Huh. Which doesn't work.
Yeah, it doesn't work, I'm afraid. Get a few issues. Yes. Yeah, which did actually that those special interior doors do fix a problem that existed in the previous Defender, because it had quite the large steering wheel and a slightly unusual driving position. It made, well, elbow room wasn't a surplus, is the nicest way to put it, I think. There's the joke about it having a bus's steering wheel. Which... it isn't too far from the truth. Oh, here's one about the terrain response system, which well, may as well explain that a little bit. Terrain response system in an off-road vehicle is a system for the computer to analyse the surfaces and area that it's on and adjust settings accordingly. Lower the ride height, raise the ride height, stiffen the suspension, loosen it, adjust where the power goes. Am I missing anything out there really? Modify things like the sway bars, so this goes along. Because more modern off-roaders they're more active in the way they off-road opposed to the older vehicles which were passive. The parts they stayed the way they were. With the newer systems, they would tweak themselves accordingly. Yeah, but this new system has 6 modes. There's normal, a wading mode, rock crawling, mud and ruts, grass / gravel / snow, and driving on sand. Each will tweak the differential, throttle response, and the sensitivity of the traction control. Or if you were so inclined, you could set it to auto and it works it out itself, which I think probably what some people will just do, because on occasion the person who designed the system and set up the auto systems will know what they're doing. You're having difficulties with the windscreen wiper.
It is not wanting to play ball, it seems.
Yes, there's one slight issue we get with this quite a lot, is the fighting with the components to fit on the vehicles.
Time and patience to factor out the windscreen wipers today if they're going to be misbehaving that much.
Okay, a little bit more on the hybrid system. There'll be a 48 volt hybrid system, which will only be available on the 400 horsepower engine, the turbocharged and supercharged straight 6 engines. Apparently, but I wouldn't quote me on this, it's going to cost between 78,800 and 74,140,000 pounds.
Sorry, what?
It's going to cost between 78,800 pounds and 74,140 pounds for the longer and shorter wheelbase versions, respectively. It's for efficiency, not performance. This new hybrid system will include a 48 volt to 200 watt lithium-ion battery on the rear axle, an e-supercharger that runs off said battery. And also helps build boost in the turbo to get rid of turbo lag, and a belt-integrated starter generator, and feed up to 105 pound-feet of torque to the crank to start the engine. Below 3 kilometers an hour, the normal engine will cut off and run on the hybrid system. Are you looking for images for detailing?
No, I'm just...
Statistics.
When in doubt, Wikipedia.
Yes. Credit to Wikipedia, by the way, for a lot of the information we search up for on things such as tyre diameter, suspension components, things like that. So we can get specific details. I think the biggest praise for Wikipedia will go to our engine designs, because there's a significant number of engines that we will want to get as accurately as possible to make them as such. Personally, I'm quite proud of I recreated the V6 Ferrari Dino engine, which quite notably was used in the Lamborghini, apologies on that one, I'll say that again, on the Lancia Stratos, amongst a few other vehicles. Beautiful little V6. Only problem is I could not create it as accurately as possible, as the V angle was not the 60 degree or 90 degree, it was 65.
I believe this will be our first vehicle done.
Okay. So we'll run it through. Do you want to bring it to the test screens so we can hear the details? So general gist of the details here. We've kind of really gone on for most of these. Do you want to bring up the detailed stats for the fuel economy as we work our way down?
It wasn't good.
Yeah, yes, it probably won't be very good. It's a big V8 engine. Yes. Under most circumstances, you will probably be getting somewhere between 19 and 17 miles per gallon. Because due to I'm going off of motorway speed limits in Britain. Because that's where our knowledge exists. The game estimates, if we were to sell this in campaign, 25,600 quid, money, whatever currency you want to use. We're going to say pounds for simplicity's sake, which for a basic off-road vehicle is not bad. Bear in mind with our judgments here, we are using how expensive cars are actually priced in reality, not here. Has a 0 sportiness stat, which is kind of appropriate. And to prove how appropriate it is, we are going to make it do a lap of the Top Gear test track as our usual.
It's the airfield.
So the airfield.
Copyright reasons.
For copyright reasons, and we're going to send the Stoog around. This is a little thing we like to do. It's not going to make a difference turning it down. We're turning it down on our perspective.
It's loud, is it?
Yes, it's also quite loud for you guys. So I'm going to tweak that a little. Apologies on this one, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to turn that back down so it's not as noisy. Half the game's volume. Again, apologies on that one. This is a little thing we like to do for our vehicles. And what I will probably do is, as this series goes on, we will put up a lap time board, such as they use in the other motoring shows. And for comedic value, we may I think we should make a Top Gear style review of the vehicles as we use them in BeamNG Drive. Because we can, we may as well. We've got the Auotmation test track we could drive it on. Lap the test track and use it in its environment. However, there are some details we have to leave out. Because we can't really do some practicality tests, like how good it is on economy and things like that. So we kind of going to talk through. And since I'm here, I will bring, and something we like to do ourselves, is compare them to cars that actually lapped the Top Gear test track. So we can give you guys it's how we use it as how fast the vehicle is, how it performs.
So 138.8.
Yes, the 138.8, if I bring up the list here, 138.8 will place it comfortably
Towards the bottom.
Towards the bottom. It is a large 1.8 ton, which honestly is not that bad for this vehicle, off-roader, and they don't tend to be very good at speed or handling. Yes, it's 0 to 60 in 7.2 seconds, which is
brisk.
Yes, for this sort of vehicle. We're getting back down thing, one moment. 0.88. That will place it between the Alfa Romeo 8C
in the sodding rain.
In the rain, and the WRX Subaru Impreza, the European edition. However, this is the older versions from
2002.
Generally from the second episode of the original series of Top Gear. But there's our vehicle. Anything else of note we want to make? Very good reliability stat, all things considered, of 78.7%.
That's annoying. That way it's not a proper Land Rover.
Yes. I think there's a comment of 1/3 of all Land Rovers built are still running, which sounds great until you realise 2/3 of Land Rovers aren't running anymore.
No, and it doesn't say what state of running they're in.
Yes, this is just a reliability stat. We can't really go anything on that. Not bad comfort for the type of vehicle. But yeah, that is the first vehicle of our little challenge, I guess, as we put it.
Brake force is high, rear ride frequency is low. I might tweak ever so slightly.
And yes, ladies and gentlemen, example of the greebling.
Word, you.
Yeah.
Ladies,
No,
the audience
yes.
can take a guess what that word will be.
No, stop hinting, right?
There's a difference between hinting and saying fuck you.
I'm gonna have to stop making me edit, right?
I'm making sure you're not bored.
Do you know how annoying editing is?
Oh, it's a new site.
If I had the option, I would have an editor. But I'm not. I don't want to force that upon someone.
Yeah, I got my own stuff to edit, thank you very much.
I got my own stuff in edit. But anyway, yeah. I think in this case I will just bleep that. But please refrain from doing that in the future.
I know he's not going to. I'm not even looking at him, and I can tell
I'll do it when we're having to edit anyway.
You can do it on my channel.
Fair enough.
So I don't care on mine.
I'm just idly browsing for some more facts.
That's this is what I'm replaced after episode 1.
Series 1.
Just like an original Top Gear.
Yes.
And you're replaced by a female.
Does that mean you're a hamster?
I don't know what that means.
Richard Hammond.
Oh, right.
No, you become
James May.
James May.
Yeah, that's me. It didn't work.
But we're the same person. So, yeah.
That is a running joke with me, her, and one of our other flatmates with how similar our personalities can be. There's a lot of overlap in personality with this flat. Ooh, quite a decent bit of lean on this vehicle.
Oh, there's a lot more than that earlier.
Yes. Which is kind of fitting for the vehicle. Older off-roaders tend to have a habit of not being very stable in how far they can lean. I remember this, well, you still see them on occasion, on the sun visors of the vehicle, mainly passenger. No, it was the driver's side ones. There was a lot of warning stickers. I'm saying this because I know that all Land Rovers had them. Other vehicles, I'm not too sure. Probably had something along similar lines. And it was things like pictures of, well, I said pictures, symbols of the vehicle toppling over and things like that. Avoid sudden swerves, things along those lines. And there's the memorable joke of, if you operate the steering wheel of this vehicle, it will fall over. Yes, it did happen quite a bit. For those interested in how to solve this sort of problem, you got a number of options. You can either make better anti-roll bars, you could maybe lower the suspension so it's a lower centre of gravity, or adjust the interior so the centre of gravity is lower, or you could stiffen the suspension to decrease the roll.
Sort of works.
It's not the best option. It would stop it from leaning as much, but the ride would suffer as a result.
Yeah.
And normally it's better to just deal with the anti-roll bars in this case.
Our friends Dents will just simply have to put up a slightly lower rear ride frequency.
Yes.
Because to get rid of that,
the off-road ability of the vehicle will suffer as a result.
That bit goes a bit weird.
Yes.
Goes a bit quite uneven. Right.
So now we shall export to another game. And once you've done the export, would you please export as a .car file as well? I will rename the vehicles in the export so you guys can easily get them and make out what's what. It's pretty straightforward, and once this is done, we will call it an end for this episode. Give it a moment. There we go. It's now available to drive in Beam Engine Drive. If you come back, that's the one underneath the save icon in the export screen. There we go. Save icon. Confirm. There we go. That is this vehicle finished. The Defender Dense.
The Dense Defender.
Yes, the Dense Defender. Quite a nice vehicle. We have yet to do a drive test of this, as you've seen. Yeah, that was the first episode. We'll put it as episode 1, part 1. For the making vehicles for people who happen to live in this flat challenge. We need the appropriate, really long name board, don't we?
Yes.
The appropriate what, sorry?
The gigantic title that sticks off the end of the points board when working at the thing from you get in the old Top Gear episodes and things. The ridiculously long challenge names.
Ah, yes, the challenge names.
Yes.
The vehicle names.
No.
We're not doing a Koenigsegg.
No, we're not making a Koenigsegg, which, oh, Lord help us if we're trying to spell that one. But yeah, that was it. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Like and subscribe, all the usual shenanigans. And yeah, we shall talk to you guys next time. Bye.